Hello and welcome to an emergency quick timeout as I walk to work. The NBA draft lottery has just happened and it was a particularly exciting one. So I'm going to just get on the mic and you're going to have to excuse the poor audio quality as I walk through trees full of birds and trains running by. But the NBA draft lottery has been and gone, and the Atlanta Hawks, who had a 3% chance at getting the number one overall pick, have stolen said number one overall pick. And we'll start there. And as soon as the draft lottery came out, Bleacher Report updated their odds, as they want to do in the past couple of years, and they said that Sarr is now the runaway favourite to be selected with the number one overall pick. And it brings up a lot of questions about the future of the Atlanta Hawks, who looks like they were going to trade one or two of Trae Young and DeJounte Murray, and there were some reports that it was leaning towards being Trae Young, who I think we can all assume and say is the better player in the two. But now that they can draft an athletic, switchy, exciting young big man to pair with their defensive, lacking, offense-only young point guard, God, there's some loud birds. It's the Hawks, you have to assume that they want to keep Trae Young now, which does a lot of things for the rest of the league, because if you're the Hawks, would you rather have Trae Young and this new exciting young big man, or would you rather have Austin Reeves, maybe D'Angelo Russell, maybe Rui Hachimura, and this young big man, and keep DeJounte Murray? I have to assume they want to keep Trae Young just because the ceiling's higher there. And then all of a sudden the core for Atlanta Hawks becomes Trae Young, Jalen Johnson and Sarr at the other big man spot, and that looks very, very exciting because Trae, as mentioned, as we've all seen with our eyes, can't defend. And if you've got a 4 and a 5 who can, in theory, defend 1 through 5, at least 1 through 4, that opens up a lot of possibilities for the Atlanta Hawks to just cover up for Trae Young. And all of a sudden, if Trae Young's getting covered up, you can afford to play him more. And then his offensive output is going to maybe be as high as it was a couple of years ago when, he was up there dueling with Luka Doncic as like the most heliocentric offensive player that we've seen in recent years. Second overall pick went to the Washington Wizards. I follow this guy on Instagram called Depressed Wizards Fan, and he's like, man, we must have done something horrible in the past life to deserve the luck that they've gotten. I don't think it's too bad. I don't think it's the end of the world. You were one of the worst teams, maybe the second worst team, and you've got the second overall pick. That's fine, bad draft, whatever. You still have to draft talent, and I hope they do. Where it gets quite exciting for me is that the Houston Rockets have nabbed the third overall pick. Now, the Houston Rockets' own pick went 12th, and that was owed to the Oklahoma City Thunder, who get that 12th pick. But this was actually the pick that they traded for in a James Harden trade. So they traded for Brooklyn's future in the James Harden trade. And this trade from Brooklyn has gone up to number 3 overall. And immediately this becomes one of the more tradable and attainable picks. And Kelly Iko from The Athletic reported that this is very available. So the Houston Rockets are open for business. If anybody wants a high pick, start calling them. The problem with the Houston Rockets being open for business is that they have quite a stacked roster at the moment. Didn't really make any moves at the deadline, just that one weird trade for Steven Adams, who might not be himself when he comes back. But they've got lots of prospects. They've got the Cam Whitmores, they've got Jalen Green, they've got all the bigs that they have in the Thompson twin, the good one, Jabari Smith Jr., Alperen Sengun. So they don't really need more picks. So it's not going to be a trade that's like, for example, the San Antonio Spurs saying, okay, here's like 4 and 8, which I think is a bit of an overpay anyway, but it's not going to be 4 and 8 for 3, because what are the Houston Rockets going to do with more picks? Like they've already sold low on some of their prospects just to like get them out of the room, like Josh Christopher, who hasn't turned out to be a good prospect. He was essentially given to the Memphis Grizzlies because they just couldn't find the minutes for him. So a package to get the third overall pick is going to, you have to assume, have a good player in return, and maybe they can revisit the chat with the Brooklyn Nets, who, the trade was Jalen Green and all of Brooklyn's picks going back to Brooklyn for Mikal Bridges and whatever surrounding talent or whatever surrounding picks are in there as well. Should they revisit those chats and say, like, maybe after Jalen Green exploded a little bit post the trade deadline, should they maybe say, okay, well, Jalen Green's not going to be the salary, but do you want other matching salary plus this third overall pick for Mikal Bridges. That might be a little bit too rich, but if they don't want to draft anyone, if they don't want to add another prospect into this core, Mikal Bridges is a fine piece to get. So that's very interesting. The last time Brooklyn lost a very highly drafted pick, the last time the Brooklyn Nets gave up the 3rd overall pick, it turned out being Jaylen Brown going to the Boston Celtics, which is a nice little bit of trivia. Next pick, the San Antonio Spurs. They did very well. They obviously had their own pick, which I think was sitting just outside the top 5 or maybe 5th. And they had the Toronto Raptors pick, which was going to go to the Toronto Raptors if it fell 1 through 7, I believe, or 1 through 6, and that was traded in the Yucca Pirtle trade, which is very yuck. The Spurs hit their absolute, not their absolute high. They didn't get the 1st overall pick, but they got picks 4 and 8. And there's heaps of options here. This was the best time for the Spurs to get the pick from the Toronto Raptors. It could have been parlay, or it could have been pushed over into the following season, but that would not have been good. So now they've got these 2 picks and they can bundle them together to trade for something that they want. There were rumours that they might be involved in a Trae Young trade. Trae Young now getting Sarr as his big man probably means that they keep Trae Young. Does the Spurs want DeJounte Murray? I'd fucking hope not, because you're not going to give up a 4th or 8th pick for DeJounte Murray. They can trade one of the picks and they can draft another dude. They can draft 2 guys. In my opinion, just use the picks, have a sniff around, see if you can trade up a little bit, see if there is maybe some minor thing you can attach to that 4th pick and trade up for 3 if there's someone that you really like there. But just hold on to the picks. Draft 2 guys who there's a chance that they're going to be good, and then they're going to now be on Victor Wembanyama's timeline, which is all you need. Let's not repeat the past here with what happened with Anthony Davis, with the New Orleans Hornets, Pelicans at the time, were like, oh my God, we've got Anthony Davis. He had a great rookie season. Now let's trade for Drew Holiday, a very good player, but just older than Anthony Davis, and they obviously didn't have much success. The next team, the 5th pick, the Detroit Pistons, for the 3rd straight year, despite having the worst record in the NBA, the Pistons have fallen to the 5th pick. The last 2 years they drafted Asar Thompson and Jaden Ivey. It sucks, but also there was no good karma, no goodwill going into this draft for the Detroit Pistons. So this is also the 6th straight year that the team that had the worst record in the NBA hasn't come away with the number 1 overall pick. Now, this is something that Adam Silver didn't explicitly want, but it's something that Adam Silver has decided and legislated into the NBA by making it that we've got the flattened lottery odds. And we haven't had a team blatantly tanking like the Philadelphia 76ers since the flattened lottery odds, but we also haven't had a team sort of be in that position where it's like, oh, okay, we have to tank this hardly, and I guess it wouldn't work. Charlotte Hornets, 6th pick. I've written here on my notes, poor Detroit, poor Charlotte. No further comments. The Portland Trailblazers, they got the 7th overall pick, and they also got the 14th overall pick. Again, I have to mention, we've been told that this is a bad draft, but even in a bad draft, you can still get good players, but you've got the 7th and the 14th pick. Is there a way to bundle those together and trade for something good? If there is a team out there who has a player that they would love to trade for multiple picks, and if they're so enamored with this draft that they want multiple picks in this draft, they're probably going to call the San Antonio Spurs first and see if they can get 4 and 8. And if that doesn't work, then the Portland Trailblazers are there with 7 and 14. And I'll just do my best impression of the team who picks up the phone from Toxic Joe Cronin when he gets offered the 7th and 14th picks for a good player. No. Good question, avid listener. How did the Portland Trailblazers end up with the 14th pick? Well, the 14th pick, which was the Warriors pick, and for those playing at home, the Warriors do not have a lottery pick. I'm also wearing my Warriors jacket to work today, which is nice, but that pick was sent to the Blazers as part of the Drew Holiday trade from the Boston Celtics. The Boston Celtics received that 14th pick, which was sent from the Memphis Grizzlies to the Celtics in the Marcus Smart trade. And then the Grizzlies received that pick in a 2019 salary dump of one Andre Iguodala. So Andre Iguodala was dumped to the Memphis Grizzlies for a top 4 protected 2024 first round pick. Here we are. How good. And also that Iguodala was then traded to the Miami Heat, which when I was doing a little bit of research for that was fun. Speaking of the Memphis Grizzlies, getting the 9th overall pick is their average outcome. Again, there's teams who might want to trade up, but the Memphis Grizzlies are also a team who wants to trade for real legitimate talent. So again, if you're a seller at this off-season / draft and you've got a big piece that wants to get traded or that you want to move, you have plenty of suitors. You've got the Houston Rockets who are sitting there with the 3rd overall pick. You've got the Memphis Grizzlies who are there at 9. The Portland Trail Blazers, going back a little bit, have mentioned that they want to trade for a difference maker at the moment and maybe make a Houston Rockets level jump this season, but I just again don't think 7-14 does it. And the Memphis Grizzlies are sitting there at 9, so there are plenty of options. It's a good time to be a seller. Also, one team I didn't mention is that if the Spurs do want to trade for a win now piece, they also are sitting there. And then finally, not actually finally, but just to round off the top 10, the Utah Jazz landed at a meh 10th pick. This pick was owed to the Oklahoma City Thunder if it fell outside the top 10, so they get to keep it. The Jazz draft well. They got a real difference maker in Keontae George at 16 last year, but is Keontae George an all-star? Maybe, but you kind of need all NBA teams to be a very good basketball team, and I don't know if he's that. But then they've got plenty of picks coming in from the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Cleveland Cavaliers, two teams whose, definitely in the case of the Minnesota Timberwolves, definitely their stock is rising at the moment, so I don't know how good those picks are going to be. I don't know if a receiving team would really want a Wolves pick right now. But yeah, it's just sort of like an average outcome, isn't it, for the Utah Jazz? And no one's clicking on the Draft Lottery podcast to hear about the fate of the Utah Jazz, but there's definitely an article out there to be written in the future where it's like, how are the Jazz going to get their guy? It looks like they're going to re-sign Larry Markkinen. Larry Markkinen is a wonderful player, but I'd love to see him as a wonderful second option on a good team. But yeah, the 10th pick, it's looking like the picks they've got coming in aren't very good. It sounds like there's a helicopter above me, and I just don't know how the Utah Jazz get better from here. Anyway, thank you very much for listening. Sean Carroll, quick timeout, Sean Carroll, etc., etc. Make sure, if you haven't already, check out our most recent podcast. We did a 4-man weave last week. We've got a very exciting episode of The W coming out tomorrow. Articles coming up, playoff basketball to watch, and better podcasts coming as well. So thank you for listening, and make it a great day.